I refuse to play your Chinese food mind games.
If you're ever visiting China, be sure to take in the sights. But be careful when you take in the food, because not everything on the menu is on the up and up. There may be some dangers lurking in that meal. Here are 10 fake Chinese foods that may kill you, Part 2.
I hate Chinese food!
That steak is fake.
Oh, real American delicious meats!
Popping open one of those classic Chinese food takeout containers will always make us feel happy, since we know we're in for a convenient classic dish or two. From Mongolian beef to beef and broccoli and even ginger beef, there are plenty of traditional American Chinese food dishes that are centered around beefy goodness. However, the stuff sold in actual Chinese food might not be as authentic as advertised. 2013 was a particularly bad year for finding proper meats in the market, where it turned out that tracking down the real thing was tougher than a $2 steak. In early 2013, nearly 1,000 people across China were arrested over the course of 3 months for what were dubbed meat-related offenses.
I am the cow of innocence.
Nearly 24 different types of meat that were below health standards were seized by authorities, citing the so-called meats as either having dangerously high E. coli levels or not being completely meat altogether. More than 20 tons of product from one quote-unquote beef factory was confiscated, despite the fact that nearly $2 million worth of it was already out in the marketplace. Another factory was responsible for 2 tons of fake beef being sold to local shops and markets and selling it for $3 per pound. In both cases, the made-up meat was actually pork that had been dyed with chemicals like industrial salt and paraffin waxes to become more brown and beefy in appearance. This was done to save on costs, since beef is typically much more expensive than pork. It's a little more comforting knowing that restaurants on this side of the world are constantly reminding us of their 100% real beef policies.
We do serve 100% pure beef.
Bald-faced lies about beef.
What's the beef?
While plenty of fast food chains in the USA will proudly and persistently tell us about their beef quality, the sit-down restaurants play by the same rules. The United States Department of Agriculture has 8 separate quality grades for steak, so systems and certifications are important, and skirting them has serious consequences. It's no different in China, where in 2022, a husband and wife pair did a beefy Bonnie and Clyde impersonation and wound up paying a price.
I was made in China.
The couple was fined the equivalent of $140,000 US, with the husband sentenced to 9 years in prison and his wife serving 5 years and 6 months as an accomplice. Chinese authorities threw the book at the pair for selling inferior and counterfeit goods, in this case masquerading meats by selling pork as beef. This was more than a decade after the other major counterfeit beef bust. In a similar scam, the couple used chemicals including sodium nitrite as a taste changer and food coloring as an appearance alterer to make their pork pass as beef. The telltale sign that gave them away was when inspectors determined the nitrite content in the meat was a whopping 7 times higher than the Chinese standard.
我在北京
Send noodles.
What is in these noodles?
Except for rice, noodles might be the ingredient most closely associated with Chinese foods. Chow mein, lo mein, Shanghai noodles, Singapore-style noodles, and, of course, ramen are just a few classics of Asian culture. But in 2011, the noodles in certain parts of China weren't as reliable as our takeout menu faves. Back then, a nearly unbelievable 50 factories in Dongguan City were shut down for, you guessed it, cutting costs with questionable ingredients. 17 separate manufacturers were tagged in the scheme, which spread the no-good noodles all across the country.
You're not noodles.
Employees estimated 50 tons of tainted noodles were sold into the marketplace, while authorities confiscated 6 tons of noodles as evidence, and sources within the companies guessed over 1 million pounds of them got shipped to market every single day during the scam. The process involved manufacturing sweet potato noodles that were sweet potato in name only, substituting cheaper corn for the sweet spuds. Then, the nasty noodle ingredients included carcinogenic sulfur dioxide, animal feed, industrial dye, black ink, and paraffin wax. The factories claimed to be saving 2,000 Chinese yuan in manufacturing costs for every ton of noodles. But after the authorities showed up, it probably wasn't worth causing all those stomach aches.
Well, what kind of noodle do you want?
Who says I want a noodle?
Before we reveal more, it's thanks to our subscribers that we're able to keep making videos. So if it's your first time here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thanks so much.
I smell Chinese food.
Wined and dined.
This is what wine tastes like?
Whether you're the designated driver or not, we'd recommend avoiding wine in China. A nice wine goes with almost any meal, but it's best to steer clear of the Pinot in this case. In 2023, law enforcement put the sting on a counterfeit wine warehouse operation with a bust in the Fujian province of China. After some 10,000 bottles of wannabe white Zinfandel made their way onto the market, suspicion was aroused and the bust led to another 40,000 bottles of booze yet to be sold.
Trying to talk me out of ordering a white Zinfandel.
The scam had been going on since April of 2022, with a dozen ringleaders slapping fancy counterfeit labels matching popular imports from Australia and France onto cheaper varieties. While none of the supply was considered tampered with or contaminated, counterfeit food and drink is considered a serious offense in China. After confiscation by authorities, the massive supply was estimated to have a value of $150 million US. We know that some vintage wines get pretty expensive, but that's pretty pricey considering the fake label is the only fancy part.
Not fancy schmancy.
Give peas a chance.
Pee-hog! Got a pee-hog!
We've all been told to eat our vegetables, but in China, that isn't always wise advice. Fake green peas appeared in China's Hunan province in 2010, and it's a story bad enough to turn you green, too. The pea problem was first spotted by a health inspector at a farmer's market. Suspiciously, after being boiled for 20 minutes, the peas themselves wouldn't soften, but the water would turn a shade of green bad enough to make the Hulk jealous.
Why am I green?
A pair of illegal workshops were forging the phony foodstuffs and were forced to expose their process. An illegal green food colorant was combined with disinfectant sodium metabisulfite to make dried up and aged snow peas and soybeans transform into a plump and vibrant shade of green, which unfortunately fooled shoppers into assuming they were buying fresh peas. Reports of these poor quality peas had previously popped up in the 2000s, and this particular pair of shops had been running the scheme for 3 years. The process was particularly profitable, with one criminal admitting 1 pound of snow peas would almost double in size, and so would a pound of soybeans, so they could sell the same amount of products for twice the price. Even if the peas weren't green, all the ill-gotten money they made certainly was.
But in the end, it was all worth it.
Goodness gracious grease.
It's too greasy. It's much too greasy.
At the heart of fast food is one pretty common ingredient, piping hot frying oils. And when regularly cleaned and properly maintained, it's a perfectly safe and convenient process that gets us our quick fix for foodstuffs. But once upon a time in China, that process was anything but. In the spring of 2007, authorities of the Chinese province of Shaanxi busted an oil scam at everyone's favorite fried chicken locale, KFC. Locations in 4 different cities were investigated after it was discovered that the Chinese KFC was cutting a few corners. Rather than properly disposing of and replacing used fryer oil on a frequent basis, restaurants were using a chemical additive called magnesium trisilicate to pull unwanted particles from the oils and then send that same previously used oil back to work, frying everything from original recipe chicken to popcorn chicken to French fries for up to 10 days past the typical oil change date.
Is it cooking oil?
Yep.
While authorities raised concerns about unhealthy byproducts building up in the constantly reused product, KFC China considered it a perfectly healthy process and noted that magnesium trisilicate is safe for human consumption, in addition to being cheaper than constantly replacing cooking oil. We've heard of reduce, reuse, recycle, but this is pushing it.
Recycle, reuse.
Too chicken to try the chicken.
I don't want no chicken.
Fryer grease isn't the only thing criminal cooks in China are pushing past its expiry date, and in this case, it's more extreme than the others. The guarantee of fresh, edible food is a cornerstone of the modern system that allows us to buy food and groceries from grocers and restaurants with peace of mind. However, that trust got tossed out the window in China. Almost a dozen underground workshops were shut down in the Chinese city of Wenzhou in the summer of 2013 when police raided those behind an expiry date scam after reports of mass diarrhea and food poisoning.
Hey, yup, this thing's super expired.
A crazy concoction of chemical additives and coloring coloring agents was being used to hide the color, texture, and scent of expired meat, which was then repackaged with changed best before dates and resold to the unsuspecting public. An assortment of expired chicken drumsticks, chicken wings, and duck meat wound up being the main culprits rather than being returned to the original manufacturers for proper disposal. Suddenly, being brave enough to test the expiry date on that half-empty carton of milk in the fridge doesn't sound so bad.
Will you ever stop selling spoiled meat?
No. I mean, yes.
In a pickle.
It tastes like feet.
The Supremes once sang, "You can't hurry love." But another thing you can't hurry is the scientific process of pickling. But in March of 2022, that didn't stop major manufacturers at China's Hunan Chakchi Vegetable Industry Company from giving it a shot. Rather than a traditional long-term process of pickling cabbage in sanitary glass jars at their mass production facilities, the company was busted for fermenting cabbage in less than a week using open-earth outdoor pits dug into the ground. Witnesses claimed workers were stepping into the pits barefoot and dropping everything from candy bar wrappers to cigarette butts into the stewing cabbage.
This is what the feet smells like. Smell it.
The contaminated process had the supply turning black and spoiling in just a couple of months after leaving the factory. The pretend pickled cabbage were supplied to several major Chinese brands, including instant noodle company Kong Shifu and its Master Kong brand of soup that was instantly yanked from store shelves. The hashtag muddy ground pickled vegetables went viral in China and might be the first incident of a viral moment that would have given a viral stomach flu to anyone who ingested the contaminated cabbage.
You run the risk of causing a pandemic.
H2O no.
Don't drink that!
Hey!
If you've ever heard not to drink the water in Mexico, you can apply that advice to your next China trip too.
Oh my god, don't drink the water!
Similar to the rip-off wine idea, a 5-year-long scam was finally unearthed in 2007 about low-quality water hidden beneath a high-quality label. State authorities announced that of the annual 200 million barrels of water sold in China, an estimated 1/2 of them were fake. That's a lot of doppelganger Dasani. To save money on the manufacturing process, 4 major suppliers were fingered for skipping on the water purification and treatment processes to save a buck. That meant whatever was inside the bottles wasn't purified and was actually a hodgepodge of everything from untreated water from nature to plain old city tap water.
Hey, where'd all this water come from?
That suspicious sludge containing contaminants like fungus and E. coli was then hidden under fancy labeling and fake bottle seals and then guzzled down by the unknowing public. The most interesting man in the world used to say,
Stay thirsty, my friends.
and in the case of wannabe water, we'd say staying thirsty is probably a good idea.
I'd rather drink the pipe water.
Honorable mention, even the dog shouldn't eat it.
Is this for dogs or for people?
As we near the end of our list, we've got an incident that didn't quite qualify since this is more about fake food for pets instead of fake food for people. We've all used the line that a dog ate my homework or joked about someone's cooking being so awful that even the dog wouldn't touch it. But add this instance next to chocolate on the list of foods your dog needs to avoid. A massive recall of pet food in 2007 sparked investigations into kidney damage in pets that traced back to China, where the Chinese Safety Inspection Administration discovered chemical contamination of melamine in the rice and wheat being used to make pet food.
What kind of pet food are they selling around here?
Melamine is typically used in plastics, plant fertilizers, and as an ingredient in fire retardants, but in this case was used illegally as filler to trick testers into seeing a higher protein content in each serving of pet food. They say every dog has its day, and it seems these corner-cutting criminals got their day in court.
Where's the dog?
What dog? There's no dog here.
Counting sheep.
That's not a real sheep.
The 1990s brought us a puppet show called Lamb Chop's Play Along, but this sheepish story does not make us feel like humming a happy tune. A 2009 expose by a local Chinese TV station unearthed a surprising practice in some restaurant and market kitchens. And it was yet another case of thinking about money instead of thinking about mutton. A fake lamb meat scandal exposed the practice of swapping out pricier mutton meat with duck meat, which is 1/4 the cost and therefore means more cha-ching for the crooks.
if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck.
In 2020, Chinese citizens consumed nearly 3 million annual tons of sheep and lamb meat, more than 10 times that of second-place Australia. So selling cheap duck at the high price of more popular meat was a sneaky steal. This stomach-turning scam went as far as to soak the duck in mutton oil to give it a lammy taste, but the worst of the offenders specifically used actual sheep urine to give it an unmistakable similarity. We'd say this is one fake Chinese scam that definitely deserves to get flushed.
The Chinese takeout you keep ordering, it ain't coming.
Stick around and check out more great videos. Just tap or click, hit that subscribe button, and ring that notification bell.